investigating our conversation on what the future holds for all of us and how we're going to be ready for what's coming. I'm ecstatic to have with us Dirk de Jager joining us from Europe, from Amsterdam. Dirk started his career in 1989 as a project leader for an alliance of local trade unions farmers. He's worked in Brazil, Ecuador, Ghana, Mali, Hungary, and the US. In 1993, he became project leader for the European Trade Union, and he traveled to nearly all the EU countries to advise on the development of European work councils at multinationals in the food chain. Then from 2002 to 2014, he worked as deputy mayor in the Amsterdam West District. He was responsible for transport, public space, and sustainability. And in 2014, he started Sustainable Solutions because he truly believes in approaching the human aspect in relation to urban development. Dirk is here to talk to us about the future of cities, urban planning, and sustainable transport. Thank you, Dirk, for doing this.
Nice being with you here today.
Okay, awesome. So, Dirk, as we just start this conversation and start warming up into this topic, from where you sit today, from where you see the world, why have a conversation about the future?
I think globally speaking, globally wide, we are in a very urgent phase as far as the world is concerned. We have to make some very fundamental choices as human beings at this planet to make sure that we have a sustainable future for us. And this has, of course, to do mainly with the main topic, which is the climate change. And as you know, we are very close to what we call 12 o'clock. It's not 2 minutes before 12. It's not 1 minute before 12, but it's a couple of seconds before 12. Before a mechanism in the world of climate which already started, but will accelerate in a way that we as human beings hardly can have any influence on it anymore, which will mean there will be an enormous amount of disasters of this in the world, which mainly will affect the poor people in this world. The one who cannot protect themselves. So and therefore we have to do a couple of.
I want to understand the problem first a little bit better before we go into solutions. So you're saying the clock is ticking. It's not hours, minutes, it's seconds. Can you tell me what is going on? What is the landscape for a layman who doesn't know what's going on in a climate problem? How would you describe the problem, and how would you explain the seriousness of what's going on?
The problem is that the temperature on Earth, on average, is increasing rapidly. And as you might know, in the Paris Treaty, it's agreed among most of the nations internationally that we should stop the temperature with 1.5 degree before 2030, and we are not at all in this direction. We are much higher, and all the CSC institutions and everyone knows that we're going far beyond the 2.5 degrees. And if this happens, the pole sides of the world will melt, and exactly, and it will mean that the level of the sea level will increase with meters, and that will mean that a lot of countries in the world will be affected and disappear, especially deltas, but also islands, and at the same time the rivers, the water, the melting water will come much faster than it is. So from the inside side, the water will come as well, and the climate will change. We will have much more heavy range, which it started already with storms, and the heavy range means that the ground cannot absorb anymore the water. So there will be a lot of floodings in the world, and at the same time, some other places there will be very high dries. Temperature will raise increasingly very high, up to 50, sometimes more than 50 degrees, up to 60.
Okay.
Which means a lot of
you're saying extreme temperatures.
Crops cannot grow anymore. People cannot get an income anymore from an agriculture point of view. So they will start running over the world within countries. And so this is the general problem we're in, and this is the main problem we are facing. Beside wars, we have wars, of course, and that kind of thing. But that's the main problem, and this is a main element which influence everything, and it influences also, of course, urban life and the concentration of people in cities, which increase, as you mentioned before. But this will, within this background, we have to think about our strategy also for urbanism. What would it mean for us, and what kind of cities we want to develop in this context which is coming? So that's a main thing we have to worry about if we go into solutions and if we go to strategies.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thank you for explaining that in such a beautiful, simplistic manner. Which are the countries, if you had to list the top 5 countries that are responsible, as of now at least, for this change in temperature?
The United States of America, number 1, with, I think, most of the European countries, including the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, because these are the countries where the Industrial Revolution started and the industry developed. And over the last 150, 200 years, the CO2 reduction, the CO2 emissions came more and more and more. And so these countries are the main responsible for the fact that this happened. And just not a good policy on what kind of resources we're using. So the resources of the earth, of oil and gas, and which in fact we are using so heaven with all the CO2 emissions on it. And this is very mainly used by the fact that big companies and the system could easily get money out of this, and there was not a long-term sustainable strategy on it. And now we see that other countries like India and China and Brazil and other countries, they are coming in a developing phase of industrialization and developing as well. And of course, to get to this level, they are using also a lot of natural resources, and will have a lot of CO2 emissions as well, because they're in another phase in their development.
But you're
which
saying,
of course is important.
But up to now, as of now, it's largely, you're saying, the developed world that's the largest contributor to the problem, at least as of now.
In fact, the United States is still in the top. If you look to the each head of the population per country of the emissions, India is very low still.
Is it? India, China are still very low on the map?
Yeah, because you have so many. You have so many people. 1 billion people.
On a per capita basis, you're saying. Okay.
So if you look to my country, we have only 18 million people living, and if you would see what we spend in CO2 emissions per head of the people, we using much more, and which is in the United States even higher, much higher.
Okay.
So according to the strategy, we have to find a strategy where knowledge and finance from the Western world should be put in the development of India, China, some other completely other countries in the world, from a global perspective, from a global interest. That's something what should be developed more and more. It's a little bit done, of course, in the Paris and the last international treaties, but still it's not sufficient. So it's something there need to be done to make sure that also countries like India get the possibility to develop them further, but without having too much CO2 emissions to get it in balance. So this is, of course, international policy, but it's needed.
Okay. You had touched upon initially on an agreement that there already is in place to get these emissions to net zero by, I think, 2030 is the number that they've put out.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this net zero policy? And do you really think this is a realistic target to be net zero by 2030?
Well, in fact, it's based on a system of well, it's in fact it's an agreement without sanctions, which makes it difficult. So if a country is not really delivering what they said they deliver, there is not a sanction. It's not a legislation. So that makes it very vulnerable on it.
There's no punishment. There's no stick.
No. That's a problem.
Is there a carrot? Is there an incentive or a carrot?
Some incentive is it through, but that need to be done at national level. So at the different national levels, you see that if companies are investing in more sustainable production, they get more money, they get subsidy, they get, and the price of natural resources for gas and oil, etc., they get more tax, and the other got less tax. So that's a way how you can work on this.
But that's done at every country's own level. It's not part of that treaty that they signed. There's no global body that's administering this.
It's administrates, but it's not that there is a kind of financial, a little bit, but not a big financial incentive coming from the Western world towards the development countries. It's not sufficient for that. It should be developed. It's there, but not sufficient to make sure that investments in India can be done in a way that it will not hurt the development of India. That's the problem. That's a political problem, of course. So the existing agreement will not be sufficient to solve the problems, and that the temperature on Earth will go beyond the red line of the 1.5 degree. So we have a big problem.
We have a big problem. Oh, okay. So you don't think this is going to work, and you think that we are going to cross that red line?
I'm not. I cannot look into the wall. But giving the existing agreement, it's not sufficient.
Oh, it's not sufficient.
No.
Okay. And how many countries have signed this agreement? Are you seeing like the whole world come on together to sign this?
I think 90% of the countries signed this agreement.
Okay. But it sounds like a sort of loose agreement. There's no carrot, there's no stick. It seems sort of like a cursory put together of something, and you just sign it without any.
No, it's not sufficient, but we don't. But it's the best we have. There is nothing else. So I'm an optimistic man, and so we have to work on this direction. The steps been taken. So the only thing we can do is make people aware, make politicians aware, make industrial people aware, make everyone aware, and make actions also more actions to put pressure on politicians to make sure that we will make sufficient steps. So that's the only way what we can do. And also at local level, we can do things to make steps, to create things. So it's one thing which need to be at national but also international level, but you need also the local level to develop
very nice. So you're
policy.
saying,
Yeah, you need both levels to develop.
National, local, down to the ground. Okay, so,
Exactly.
so it sounds like a pyramid structure. The change needs to come all the way down. Can we take, Dirk, one area at a time and possibly start at the top of the pyramid? If you had to think of a global, from now let's move to solutions, right? You explained the problem very nicely and clearly. Now, if I had to think about solutions for the future, what should be happening? What would you recommend to the international community and then national? Let's go down that value chain.
Yes, I think it would be needed from a financial point of view that there will come an international fund funded by maybe the countries with most of the money. There should be a system where they invest they put money in it for investments in making very fast transition from oil and gas towards wind, solar, and other kind of other sustainable energy. Because the interesting is that it's also from a financial point of view worthwhile energy. It becomes cheaper and cheaper to get wind and solar in energy and other kind of energy, water energy, etc. The point is only you need an investment in the beginning before you get the money out of it. So the money exists in the world. It's there. There is a lot of money. So you should make an agreement that to put that money in the investment, and then later countries can pay this back if they got the revenues out of it. You should find a way to put more pressure on international companies like Shell and Exxon and all kind of others who still are in this field, that they be forced to make a transition in investment as well in sustainable energy. That's something which should be needed, is needed to do so. Then a second level, what is needed is to work much more in an integrated way on the national level as far as the knowledge is concerned, because there is a lot of knowledge available, and we should share much more this knowledge in international way and work together with each other so that knowledge is being shared. And we know knowledge is power, of course, and we know that knowledge will have the future of a country is related to knowledge, but we need a kind of international agreement, an international situation where this knowledge is being shared because it's an interest of a whole.
Who has the knowledge right now? Who has the power balance in terms of knowledge?
I think the knowledge is available in the United States, in Europe, and I think also China has knowledge at the moment at this level. But in Germany, in England, in the Netherlands, in France, the Scandinavian countries, in the United States, in Canada, there's a lot of knowledge developed. Also, China is developing quickly this knowledge. And I think until a certain extent, knowledge is developing in India as well as a big country. But I think they still have to make big steps in this field.
Okay. So knowledge sharing is a second factor for international governments and international community. Okay.
Yeah. And then the third level is to really work in an integrated way with integrated international teams. I think that's always good. at all levels, also on, if we come back to urbanism and the development of cities, try to work in an international team, having on board people who have expertise on mobility, people who have expertise on public space, people who have expertise on energy transition, also on social aspects in this whole matters. But I think there is often also knowledge at local level, people who know exactly at local level what the situation is, what is needed. And this is also very important knowledge. And the knowledge, both knowledge should be bringing together on an equal level, on a mutual level and mutual cooperation, and work on with international teams with each other. Also with recognition of the cultural context you work in, because the cultural context in Mumbai is different than the cultural context of Amsterdam. And you need to understand that the cultural contexts are different in order to make a strategy which is really fits in that situation. So it's money, it's knowledge, and it's international cooperation, international cooperation, international teams.
Okay, wow. It sounds like you have a very clearly laid out plan in your head. I'm not sure how pragmatic this plan is in terms of actually implementing it, but when you say it so systematically, you make the solution look quite simple. So I'm hoping more people are listening to you.
I think in terms of content, how to do it, in terms of money, it's all possible to solve the problem. It's possible. We have the knowledge, we have the money. The problem is more what I will call the orgware, the organizational part. There the problem is. There is the power positions of institutions, of nations, of the fact that we are living in an international world where there is a free market and there is big companies who have the power. So the main problem is at this level. So you have to solve the level of cooperation. If you have solved this, you can solve the problem, because we know how to do it, and we have money.
And we have the money to do it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think we need to start looking at humanity as one, and then look at all of us as one planet. I think when that lens shifts, then this collaboration will happen. Right now, it's very me, my problem, my money, my resource, my knowledge. And then they want to keep it curtailed to their borders. If they start thinking of the border as the planet, then I think we might see a systemic shift. So
exactly.
Okay, but I think that was very well explained. Thank you for explaining that. Let's go down one more level, right? So everything you spoke about was now at this global level. Now, if you take a country, let's take the Netherlands, or take any country you like. From the country perspective, what should they be doing? Let's go one step lower.
Yes, it's needed at national level to make a good analysis for the long term. And if I talk about the long term, I think we should think about a period maybe of something between 67 and 100 years ahead.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, because you should need a vision where you want to go to as a country. And that has to do with what's your economic future, your social economic future, where are your resources, what do you want to do? For example, India, as we know, India has been, and still for a big side, is an agricultural country. Still a lot of people live at the land side, outside cities. It's growing fastly, but it's still on agriculture. You see that industry is taking place in cities, and mainly very close to the seaside, countries like Mumbai, but also Chennai, but also without Delhi, of course. But especially these big industries are very often located not too far from harbors, so what kind of future India looks like, for what kind of country you want to be in the longer term. And that's very important to have a vision on that, because this is also related to how to deal with the fact that the temperature will raise. What does it mean for having enough food, having enough water, because that becomes a problem as well. One of the having enough water which you can drink and which is good, and do you have enough water for your crops? What will happen if people start to run from the agriculture side to the cities? Can we absorb the people or not? And what does it mean for a city? How a city should look like? If and should it be open as a policy that you just say, well, we have urbanism, we just let it go, and or you should have a policy to stop this process more and invest more in the countryside, to say, well, we need some more labor work and the development of people more decentralized or not. I'm not giving the answers. That should be done in the country as India itself, but you need a long-term vision on it, and that's at the moment not the case.
Are you seeing it happen anywhere? Are you seeing any countries sit down and do this sort of long-term planning?
I think that not enough, to be honest. But there are some countries like Denmark, for example, who have a much better idea about this. They have much longer term vision, and they work on this as far as energy is concerned and investment in cities, etc. But it's more easy for them because it's a relatively small country. They have much more space. You will see the same in Norway and to a certain extent in Sweden, because these are well-developed Western countries. They have space. They have their own resources as far as energy is concerned. So their position on this is easier to do so. But yeah, you need this kind of position, and in fact, till a certain extent, China is doing this as well, because China is a country where you have a very nation. By the government, longer-term planning, as you know. And I don't say that's a good policy, but they at least have a longer-term vision on what they want to do. And so this could be very successful in the long term. And that's something what's needed. And urban policy should be part of this more broader nationwide vision. And that's not sufficient at the moment. It's not related.
But it sounds like in some of the countries you mentioned, it seems like in the socialist and communist countries, they have this longer term horizon. But in the democracies where your tenure as an elected governor or elected position holder is 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, you're only worried about your 5-year term, right? Because then you're going to be running for election again. So I think if they shift that lens, in a socialist country, they say, hey, we need to look for the welfare of our citizens over the next 50 years, or in a communist country, right? But I don't know how in a democracy, and I think in India, that's a big challenge for us, because everyone is only looking for their term, and that's 3 years, 5 years. And so this long term.
I'm not saying that in all communist countries this is running in, because in Russia it's a complete other situation. In North Korea, it's I think China. I think China is relatively doing good. So and I'm not. So but you're right. The problem in democratic countries is that you have every 4 or 5 years elections. And then you tend to have too much a short-term policy, and this is stimulated also that we have this very extreme free market neoliberal policy over the last 20 years worldwide. So you should find a balance between a democratic system with free market space, because this gives a lot of very good new ideas and give also economically positive movement. But how to find the balance between the influence of the private sector and the private space and the public space. And at the moment, internationally, the public part is too dominant. Sorry, the private part is too dominant instead of the public one.
Sure.
And you need a good balance also at national level and at international level in this regard.
Okay.
It's difficult, but I think it's needed.
Okay, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's absolutely needed and was definitely complex. Dirk, I want to also touch upon a little bit about your experience in Amsterdam as mayor of Amsterdam and your initiative Meet Amsterdam with a cycling network that you had established.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about sustainable modes of transportation. Where are you seeing, the electric vehicle phenomena versus electrical bikes versus just plain old going back to cycling? What's going on?
Yes. Yeah. Well, in the Netherlands as a whole, we have developed over the last, I think, 30 years, very bicycle-friendly policy, which means that we have the situation that at the moment, the model split general over the country is that about 28% of all trips are done by bicycle, which is extremely high. I think this is the highest in the world. And if I look in my city of Amsterdam, we see that it's about almost 50% of all trips are done by bicycle. And in the city center, it's even higher. So there is a very good infrastructure network for cycling in the country as a whole. And this is at city level, at urban level, but also there is a good connection between cities for cycling. So you could go easily from my city, completely in a trip only through separated bicycle paths to the deep south of the country or to the north.
Okay.
So now, you have safe cycling everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere.
Intercity, between cities, etc. What does this imply for what's happening over the next short term, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? What are you seeing?
I see that what we see is that of course we have a process of urbanization as well. So the number of the people living in the cities is increasing rapidly as well. So what we see is that I think almost 50% of the new apartments and housing is built within the city itself. It's a kind of how you call it. It's more condensed, more concentration, and the other 50% of the new housing is more around the city, so suburb places. In between cities and between the house and apartment, we see that the bicycle, the distances for bicycle is increasing because you have electrical bicycle. So on a regular bike, the average trip is about between 5 and 7 kilometers per trip between your house and your work or school. But giving the electric bike, it can go up to 20. So your range is increasing because of this, and having that combined with very good bicycle paths, that's a development that goes very fast. The second development is that the investments in public transport are increasing. So more trains between the cities with a higher frequency, with better quality. And we have within the city a better metro system and bus system. So investment on bicycle and public transport. We have a parking policy for cars in the city, which is very, very, I call it, you cannot park your car in the city anymore, hardly, because there is no space. So new areas, you will buy an apartment, but you cannot have your private car because there is no space for it. So what you see is more joint used cars. So for example, if you have an apartment building with 200 apartments, then there are maybe 20 cars available, but these cars are not private owned, but these are shared cars, most of them electric, not all of them, most of them electric. And so you can just by your app plan when you need car and to go. And so there should be sufficient cars, but so people will is mobility as a service will come more and more. So combination of public transport, bicycle, walking, combination of maybe using a car and combine that also maybe with public transport. All kind of combinations is coming up. So this is a process which is as far as transportation is concerned. So less cars in the cities. We see that the public space, there is less cars in the public space.
So how did this happen? Look, this sounds great. This sounds like a fabulous role model for a city like mine, which is so heavily dependent on public transport, but there isn't enough public transportation, let alone bicycling. Bicycling is a very, very tiny fraction of people.
I know the situation in India very well. Yeah. It has to do with the cultural background in the Netherlands that cycling is we used to cycle a lot. And in the 70s, when the car came up in the city very fast, a lot of children were died by cars because and then there was an uprising from parents who said, stop the child murder. Big protest against this.
Okay.
We had by that time also an international oil crisis, a crisis that we had less oil. And then at the Sundays there was the cars. You could not use the car at Sunday to save oil. And so the roads were free of cars, and people start to use the highways and streets again with bicycling and playing. And then there was some policy, and it got political support as well. And then the change started in this direction.
Some cultural influences, some social influences, and then the political aspect.
Yes.
Okay. I know you're doing some work in India, Dirk. I know you're working with the Chennai government and the Karnataka government, so Tamil Nadu and Karnataka both. If you could talk a little bit about what you're doing and how are you helping this country and these states become sort of future ready.
Well, as you know, the Chennai metropolitan government is in a process of making a new long-term master plan for the city as a whole for the coming 20 years, and they are thinking about also in this idea of what does it mean for transportation. And we have been able to be in discussion with the government on what would be the position of cycling in this. And we proposed to develop also a bicycle master plan as an integrated part of the total master plan. And well, that's in preparation now. What we can bring in, and we are discussing with them at this moment, is to bring in the Dutch experiences on how to do this, how to develop a strategy, And this strategy has three important elements, what we call the hardware, the software, and the orgware. So it needs a strategy to make a very good bicycle network. So not just a bicycle path going from nothing to nowhere, but you need an idea what you
like
want
a
to
map.
connect to.
You map this, like how you map the metro systems in cities.
Yeah, connectivity, origin and destination.
Sure.
So that and that should be very close related to the metro system with the transportation, so that you can combine the situation. And now you have, for example, now you have a relatively good metro system in Chennai, but if you get out of the station,
yeah,
you're
back
stuck.
again. Yeah.
And your last mile is a problem. So how to create a good first mile and last mile relation in your total idea? And that's related to the long-term urban master plan, because at the moment you see that most of the important city buildings are concentrated in the center of the city, universities, governmental buildings, shopping, etc. Well, they think about having a more decentralized city and having more different city centers instead of one. So then part of it, you should connect your mobility in this as well. So that's the way we're talking with them. The software is more, that's the hardware part. And the software, and for example, there is a relation to not having only your own bike, but having a good bike sharing system, which has a good quality, which is reliable, which is cheap. For example, I worked in Iran as well. What we have done in Tehran is that if you are using the metro, you get almost for free the bicycle. With your card, you can use your bicycle, your metro card, also for the bicycle. And if you come with the metro, use of the bike is free. And even in Tehran, it is, if you have more kilometers, if you use the metro more, you get even money back. You get a discount on your metro if you use the bicycle. Having incentives financially to do this. Well, software is the second part. This has to do with the cultural, with the mindset. As you know, the car is the holy cow in the new holy cow in India, and everyone wants to have a car, and everybody, it's a status symbol, etc.
It's an aspiration,
Yeah. So how to think about that?
Reconfigure that aspirational.
Exactly. And that's about marketing. It has about education. And we see that there is a group in India of the higher middle class people who studied outside India in other countries. They have seen that it could be different. And they are not accepting anymore that their children growing up in the city where the air pollution is so strong, which is so bad for their health. So they demanding also for other things, and they start to cycling. So you have some front runner group who you have to, from a statistical side, put them in this situation. And the third element is what we discussed before. There's what we call the orgware. These are the organizational preconditions. Make sure that there is a good plan, but that there is also finances. And if you want to really have developing a good bicycle plan, you have two buttons you can turn on. One button is to have more space for cycling and also for walking, for pedestrians. And the other button is the parking and the car. So there's up the volume up for the bicycle and putting the volume down for the cars. And this one is politically the most difficult one. But you have to do it. Otherwise, it will not work. Well, this kind of elements, we work on them, and we did with Karnataka as well.
Okay.
And maybe on national level, for you, my information, I'm talking with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs and the Ministry of Health and Family. Care. To what I call a plan for India which is the Triple 10 plan. And the Triple 10 plan is find as a follow-up of the existing smart city program. As you might know, the smart city program will stop, or is stopped already. Probably after the elections in May, there will be a follow-up program, and now they're discussing what would be the follow-up program. And I presented a plan there. That part of it is Triple 10, which means there are 10 Indian cities who are committed to change in a period of 10 years their model split from 10% less cars and motorized two-wheelers to 10% more cycling, walking, and public transport. And that they have to make a plan for this, having 3 goals: improving health, air quality, and active mobility. Secondly, less CO2 emissions, our discussion we had in the beginning. And third, a better accessibility. This can be done. And this is related to sustainable, United Nations sustainable goals. And we try to get money from the World Bank of it and the Asian Development Bank, getting the Netherlands government involved. We're talking with a German company, with GIZ. So getting a kind of program to really make progress. And then I come back to my investment program. This could be a good investment program, having money from the Western world together with the Indian government, having knowledge from the Netherlands and other countries, working in integrated teams, and in fact working on local level in cities, but in fact working on an international goal. That's a very concrete way how we could work on that, and I'm working on it at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Dirk. This is amazing. You make everything sound possible. You make everything sound plausible. You make everything sound very practical. And just listening to you has been an eye-opener for me. And honestly, I end this call with a note of optimism, because just the way you explain it with such simplicity, and I'm sure you're talking to lots of governments out there and explaining to them that, look, this actually can be done, because confronted with the problem, it just looks like such a big problem, and you're like, how, in the beginning I was like, what is he saying, how will this happen? And now by the end of the conversation, you have completely managed to convince me that there is a way out, as long as you do it systematically, strategically, and with a long-term perspective in mind. I think you're really a man of the world, and every country should give you honorary citizenship, because the kind of tremendous value you're adding. Thank you for doing all the work you're doing for India and all the other countries in the world, because I wish we could just multiply Dirk de Jager into millions and have lots of you around the world, because you really are a man on a mission, and a man on a mission to help humanity overall, and not just looking out for yourself or your country. So thank you for all that you do to make the world a better place. And thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and look success with the book, and looking forward.
Absolutely, I will have you at the launch, Dirk, for sure.
Please post me on the launch, etc. I'm really 100%. Interested. I'm very interested in it.
100%. And since you make trips to India, then we will just try to time something. Maybe do an event in Chennai or wherever you will be for this, for sure.
Yes, for sure.
For sure.
Okay, thank you.